Okay, hello and welcome to our weekly Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that I try to do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it normally runs for about 3 hours. So if you are new here, welcome, and if you are returning here, welcome. So how is everybody doing this week? I know the world is changing at a very rapid pace. It seems like on an hourly basis. And I know that anxiety and um, depression are rampant for a lot of people, probably especially so for people in our community or anybody that's struggling living in a dysfunctional, toxic, or abusive household. Overcomer. Wow. Yeah. She says, "Hi, Dana. I finally get to catch you again. It's been a while." Yes, it has been. Oh my goodness. Kamami says, "Bonsoir. I forgot to tell you last week that now, besides the fines between $40 and $4,000, and this is in France, if you don't have any valid and solid reason to be outside, you may go into prison for it." My goodness. Yikes. LMA says she's been doing well. She's just been resting. Overcomer says, "How have you and your family been?" Um, I've been okay. Family has been okay. It's a little nerve-wracking for me to be so far from them. I really worry. My mom is in Colorado and, um, you know, I worry. So I just worry about all of them. That's what's so tough. But thank goodness we live in the an age of the internet and phones. So that makes all of this a little bit easier, but it's still really scary. I'm in Michigan, which is now unfortunately the third most hit state, or the third state with the most cases. So that's a little unnerving. I was feeling kind of better about being back here in Michigan because it's so spread out, and now it's just a very unnerving feeling uh, leaving the house. So, really, Ran Lyon says here in Canada, fines for not self isolating is between 1,000. Does that 500,000? Oh my goodness. Ted, hi. He says, "Never watched you live. Thanks for your work." Well, good deal. Well, welcome. We're glad to have you. Is anybody going stir crazy yet with the quarantine? Are you taking up any new hobbies, or uh, what are you doing with this time? Oh, that's sweet. Speculator says, "I've been doing well lately. To pass the time, I filled a box with nesting materials for birds and squirrels. They're gathering from it." Oh, Slavic Princess says, "Hello. I just want to say a quick hello and acknowledge everyone who is here tonight." Well, welcome. And I owe you an email back. I have not forgotten. I just have been busy, but I will get back to you. Okay. Oh, very cool. Tiffany says, "I joined a virtual book club on Meetup." Oh, I love it. What a wonderful idea. People, I tell you, like if people can just be so clever, and the the kind of workarounds that they can come up with during trying times, just I don't know. It's really cool. I think that's one of the things I'm excited about with the world, where we're all going to be after the virus gets under control, is I think there's going to be a lot of realizations of we can do things very differently. People can work from home. A lot of things can be online, which can be really great for people that live in very rural areas or small towns, or that have challenge, but that are agoraphobic, or that just have some sort of challenge with time wise or physical health wise with leaving the house. So I think it's going to potentially open up a lot of new opportunities that weren't really there before. Gamer Christina says, if you had an emotional flashback in front of coworkers, how would you face them again? I had a breakdown and now people question, who am I? I guess it would depend on how kind of what your dynamic is with these coworkers. Are you close to them? Are you guys kind of like work friends? Or is it people that you are on more of a, sorry, the dog just charged in. This is gonna knock over Roman, buddy. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I guess it depends on the dynamic of your relationship with them. Um, I guess regardless of the dynamic, you could just say something along the lines of, you know, boy, what happened the other day um, was was really out of character for me. Uh, it's whatever happened just kind of hit a soft spot, and um, I'm really embarrassed that you guys had to see that. And don't apologize for it, but I would just be honest, like, I'm really embarrassed that I had this moment at work. So that's, you know, that's all any of us can do. I think most people will understand. I had shared before, I had a moment, this, oh, hold on just a second. Come here. Come here. I will love on you. I will love on you. What do you want? Come here. Say hi to the peoples. Say hi to the peoples. Yes, yes, yes. Um, so I had a situation at work. This was years ago. I had a miscarriage a couple years before that. And no, I guess it wasn't that long. Maybe it was about a year or so before this incident. And I was having coworkers having baby showers right and left. And I was just finding myself really withdrawing from that, not wanting to participate. And I didn't realize that that was such a trigger for me at the time. I just was upset with myself. And anyways, I forced myself to participate in this baby shower. I bought a gift, I shouldn't have done it. It was so traumatic. The whole thing was really upsetting. Um, Bought a gift and then ended up leaving during the middle of the party. I just couldn't, and I just went back to my office and just cried. And my boss came and knocked on my door, and and I just unloaded on her. And of course, this was so out of the blue for her, and it was really embarrassing, but I get it. These things happen. We all have our soft spots. I agree. Slavic Princess says we are all human and should never be shamed for having nervous breakdowns. Yeah. Let's see. Slavic Princess says, try listening to Peter Levine's audiobook, Healing Trauma. I used to have crazy tics when I was triggered at times and no longer have them. Teacher Spring VIP says, I'm doing phone therapy sessions now. Yes, that's a wonderful new thing that's been going on, is that all of the telehealth that's becoming more and more popular and mainstream. Chrissy W asks, how do I move on after a discard? Anyone have any ideas for me during a painful time? It can help. You might have heard this suggestion. I give it often because it works, but it can help to make a list out of all of the reasons that relationship wasn't right for you. Um, and then I would label the list, for when you miss him or her, and then go back and read that list and write it in like a bullet point format. So it's easy to scan and read, because a lot of the pain of the discard comes from when we perceive a loss, that we've lost something, or if we're really hurt because of betrayal or really hateful, hurtful things that somebody's said. That's why we feel that way. And so if we can kind of change Change how we perceive it, or actually perceive it in the correct way. So what I mean by changing how we perceive it, if the discard was, um, if we're focused so much on the loss of the relationship, but the relationship wasn't healthy, then focusing on why that relationship wasn't healthy, kind of a thing. So, changing your focus on it. And then it helps, because here's the other thing too with loss in general, is it leaves a void. It leaves a void in our life. And it helps profoundly to work towards filling that void with something positive. I think a lot of people that tend to really get stuck, um, missing, well, with any type of loss, whatever it might be, no matter how ready for it they might be, whether it's quitting smoking or a relationship ending or anything else, um, it helps to fill up that time. So, thinking about, okay, well, what are some books that you'd like to read? What are some hobbies that you'd like to start? Um, what can you do with that energy that you're experiencing right now? And how can you channel that into a positive way? Well, thank you. Salt String Music says, I adore you. You are part of the reason I am now free, divorced from a narcissist as of 1/16/2020, with an amazing man and going back to school to be an addictions counselor. Very cool. Fantastic. Congratulations. I I am so thrilled that you're going to be an addictions counselor, and that line of work, the whole process of learning about addictions and the brain chemistry and the psychology and the physiology of it all. If you ever want to work in the field of kind of abusive or traumatic relationships, that'll help you significantly. So I'm just, yay you. Phoenix says, Dana, I don't know how to channel my pain and grief into something positive and productive. Well, one of the things that helped me is to think about it in terms of small steps. It doesn't have to be one big major thing. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by that, making that declaration to yourself that, um, the best revenge is a good life. And then thinking about, okay, well, what makes for a good life for you? So again, to kind of share from my experience, Roman, come here. Um, what helped me, what I focused on was getting organized, really taking the time to get organized and to cook nourishing foods for myself. So I took up cooking, I took up organizing, and I think had there been anybody else around, they really would have thought I had kind of lost it, especially with the organizing part, because I would have these freak out moments where I'm like, okay, this has got to stop. And I would dump out a junk drawer and then start organizing it. Or I'd go, clean my car, or because there does come a point where there is this fork in the road where you can go one of two ways. And you're going to we all cope with things in either a conscious way or more of a subconscious way. So we can either choose how we start coping with things, or we're just going to let life decide. And that can be a very scary place. It's very easy to slip in to all kinds of problematic behavior, in order to cope. Smoking, drinking, eating, spending money, all of these things. So making a conscious effort, a conscious decision about how you're going to cope and how you're going to be on the other side of this pain. It's hard. It's hard to, and it takes time. It takes time to really process all of these feelings surrounding this. It's a trauma, but you can do it. Oh, okay. 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 So I apologize. I didn't see that part. Phoenix says, "Oh no, Dana, the pain is about losing my baby." But I suppose some of the same advice can help. Okay, here's what I have to say to that when we're talking about the difference, um, because it is easy to get, and understandable to get lost in grief, is making a line in the sand. There's grieving, and that's a process that can be ongoing for sure. But deciding there's a time that you're going to be grieving the loss, but then there's also a time for you to honor the life that was. And channeling that energy into honoring helps tremendously. So um, here's another example. Okay, so I lost my dad uh, in November, right? And um, it was a very traumatic time. His The day of his diagnosis to the day of his death was less than 5 weeks, and um, just things happened really, really quickly. It was very chaotic. It was incredibly stressful, and he died uh, upstairs in kind of I don't know what you'd call it. It was kind of this landing area that we had upstairs, and so I was there for like an extra month or so after he passed, kind of finalizing as much as we possibly could and doing these things. And one of the things that really helped was because I realized right away, I'm like, man, if I've got to do something to really change the energy in here, or I could just feel how I could just feel the sadness and the trauma in the air. And so what we ended up deciding to do, me and my brothers and my stepmom, was to turn that area, because it was just kind of this open space, into more of a game room. And so we put pictures of my dad up there. We cleaned off all of the shelves. We put up a lot of personal effects. We made it a space to honor him. But I also wasn't trying to create a shrine either. I really didn't want it to be this thing of sadness. I wanted it to be this thing of, we're honoring him by like doubling down and investing our energy in the family that we have and our time together. And so my brother brought over his old PlayStation, and I got the kids, my niece and nephew, some of those gamer chairs. Um, we just completely changed the room around. Everybody hangs out in there now, and it's so nice because it's no longer. Um, I don't, when I go up over there, when I go up to that room, I don't think about it as this is the place where my dad died. And this is the place that he was sick for 5 weeks. This is the place where we're connecting as a family. Dad's still here. You know, here are things that were significant to him. And we put just a few of the significant things around. And it's really nice. He's still there, like in spirit. And so I would encourage you to think about it, to add that part to it. How about that? To add in that honoring part of it of, okay, how can I honor uh, the loss of this child? And maybe you can do that by, um, if you have another child, uh, I don't know, doing some sort of event with them, or with um, deciding, okay, on maybe the day of whatever day is the most significant for you, I guess, donating some money to St. Jude's, or there's charities out there for children that have lost their parents and that are going through grief. So kind of just taking that pain and transmuting it into something positive. That pain is still there, but it does make it easier to carry when we can give it more of a purpose, if that makes sense. Mm. She says, "Yeah, I'm so sorry about your loss, Dana. Mine happened all too quickly, too. He was diagnosed with an illness and died within 24 hours. I was pregnant and went into premature labor. He died a week later." And that's very helpful. You're right, channeling grief into honor. Yeah, I hope that does help. I really do feel that giving the best way to honor those that we've lost is, or to grieve the way those that we've lost is to truly honor them. It does. I really don't think that anybody that's passed is going to look down and see us, um, moping around or just really struggling or not living our life. And I say moping around, that sounds insensitive, and I uh, forget that I said that. That was insensitive. Um, but if we're so caught up in pain because we feel like we can't move on, I guess is a better way of saying that, then it can. I don't. At least like when I die, I really hope that people focus on honoring my life and what I did with my life, and they don't focus on my death or anything leading up to my death, like sickness or what have you. I don't know. That's kind of my take on it. Chrissy says, Dana, how can I meet new healthy friends? It seems hard to do when I only have weekends to do that. Well, the good news is that a lot of things are going online nowadays, even more so than before. So meeting new people on the internet has become that much more, I think, easier and uh, just kind of accepted. Whereas before, like somebody was saying here earlier, they joined a book club on meetup.com, and that book club was probably in person a few months ago, but now it's not. So kind of, seeing what's on meetup.com and what are some things that have been moved online. And I would also add to the part of it where you were saying, how can you meet healthy new friends? So it's not just activities, but it's also taking it slow and being able to kind of understand yourself and your limits and your boundaries, and um, being able to express that to other people, and um, to grow. I guess finding uh, kind of normal, mm, healthy, balanced people is one thing, but I would say what's even more important is we've got to be able to keep those, got to be able to grow those relationships in a healthy way. So that takes skills and it takes time and it takes practice. That doesn't just come from meeting somebody that's healthy. Um, that healthy relationship isn't found, it's developed, I guess is what I'm saying. Gavin says hi from the Oregon coast. Well, hello, how are you doing? Let's see. Tiffany says, I left my husband 2 weeks ago after he told me he no longer loves me. He has pretended to love me for years. How do I ever trust anyone again? He used me for money and as a stepmom to his kids, called me a cash cow. That's profoundly painful. And what a shock. What a shock. And how devastating. And what a jerk. What a jerk. As far as how do you trust anyone again, it's going to be a slow process, and that's just part of it, because it's profoundly difficult when somebody betrays you so deeply and kind of leads you on, that is able to live a life of deceit like that for so long. It's just profoundly difficult. um, I think it's realizing that trust is something that's really truly earned and not just given. So that's a major shift that so many survivors have to make. Is before we tend to, kind of have this mindset of, uh, we're very open to trusting very freely. We freely give our trust to other people until they prove us otherwise, and then we back up a little bit. Whereas more of, a healthy middle ground is very just, kind of keeping people at arm's length, because we don't know. Like, we don't know who they are or what their intentions are. And then through time and with their appropriate behavior, with trustworthy behavior, we slowly start to kind of move forward. They move up in our, kind of sphere of circles. So we have our inner circle, which is closest to us, and then our circle for acquaintances and maybe work friends and family or other people. Or there's a circle for strangers, and there's a circle for people that have hurt us. And they're going everybody in our life is continually kind of moving through these various circles depending upon their behavior. So, you know, um, it can help to think about, if you have people in your life that, have proven that they're trustworthy, if you have, kind of, friends or family members that have always, or more often than not, have just been a source of strength and stability, to kind of use them as your baseline and thinking about how you feel around them, and realizing, okay, how it feels when you're around trustworthy people. You feel safe, you feel secure, you feel, uh, comfortable. uh, there's that level of emotional security there where you feel comfortable talking about certain things with them. And that level of safety, security, comfort is how we feel around a trustworthy person. If you find yourself feeling, uncertain, confused, kind of anxious, unhinged, all of that, it can either mean that the person's doing something squirrely, or it means that we just haven't developed that level of trust with them yet. And after going through something like that, especially if I don't know if there were any, um, warning signs or anything like leading up to that point, but if it completely just, T-boned you out of the middle of nowhere, then that can be really difficult, because it's sort of like, well, I just didn't see this coming. But, you know, it just takes time. But it is possible, but it does take time. Yeah, Elizabeth says when you're just starting, all that process seems like forever, but it truly works that way. Just move slow. Yeah. And Marzia had made the comment, everybody grieves differently. And absolutely, absolutely. ARA says, Dana, how do we actually practice slowing down in a friendship and relationship? I was taught to trust people quickly and doubt my own inner voice. How do we practice observation and slowing down? I think a lot of us, I think really as a society, most of us are taught that. If you look at children's books, a lot of them, uh, or lessons learned in Sunday school or things like this, it's they're all kind of painted in this way of, uh, forgive and forget, and, treat other people like you would want to be treated, and, turn the other cheek, and these kinds of things. Well, that's great advice if we're talking about a person who, isn't, you know, pathologically disturbed. And, uh, as far as slowing things down, learning to trust appropriately, Well, I guess there's kind of one or two ways that we learn with that. We either uh, just realize, and unfortunately, I think a lot of the time we can either realize it and be like, okay, I just need to slow things down, or we learn the hard way. And I think for a lot of people, we have to kind of learn the hard way. And and a lot of it's just trial and error, frankly. Um, we might even think we're going slow and not trusting or taking relationships slow, only to find out, only to get heartbroken in a very short period of time. So it I think it can help to kind of give yourself some framework of realizing um, how to go about cultivating appropriate trust. So when I talk about a person builds trust through trustworthy behavior, it's the little things, the obvious things if you leave your wallet out, is it still there? If, they make plans, do they keep them? These kinds of things. But is it also, uh, how are they emotionally? Is there that emotional trust there? That's what takes time. So, seeing how does this person, are they flirting with other people in front of you? Are they being inappropriate? Are they making inappropriate requests? How are they with your boundaries? How are they when you disagree? My new take on building trust is that a relationship or a friendship or anything is still in that kind of honeymoon phase until stress or some sort of stress, conflict, or confrontation is present. And it'll depend on you as to whether or not that's something that's worth working through, or if it's egregious enough that it's a deal breaker. But it's easy to get along with other people and to feel that this is a valid friendship, if it hasn't been really tested yet. If there's And again, like, if it's egregious behavior, if they're saying things that are really offensive and you're like, "You know what? I'm just done," then that's fine. You don't owe anybody anything to work through stuff with them. But if it's, uh, other types of hurt feelings or misunderstandings, or, um, especially with relationships, then how do they handle that? How do they handle their stress, their frustration? How do they handle being wrong? How do they handle negotiating and compromise and money and all of the kind of non-sexy things about a relationship? How do they handle all that? Because that's where trust is really built. And emotional safety is built on the other side of the kind of rough spots where we don't see eye to eye with another person. It's how it's handled during those times. It's easy to be loving when we feel loving. It's so much harder when we're stressed or angry or upset. But emotional trust is made and broken during those times of stress, frustration, all of that. So I think knowing how, maybe that helps. Hopefully that helps a little bit more. Kind of knowing what emotional safety looks like and how that's formed. That's how we take relationships slow. Realizing the first 90 days of a relationship tends to feel amazing. It's that honeymoon period. It's that, oh, I've never clicked with anybody so well. We have so much in common. I really feel this is the one. All of that. That's the honeymoon period. It's infatuation. And it's easy to get caught up in that, but you've got to be able to pull yourself back to reality and say, you know what? I still don't know how this person handles, stress, frustration, um, compromise, negotiation, how they are with money, what their kind of morals and values are. I still don't know enough to really fall for them, or to grow, I should say, to grow in love with them. So there's a difference there. Um, so yeah. And um, the guy I'm currently dating was the one that pointed that out to me, because I was using the phrase falling in love. And he's like, I don't want to fall in love. I want to grow in love. And I thought that was so well said. And it's growing in love has to do with treating each other appropriately and the handling challenges effectively when they come up, not deflecting, not diverting, not belittling, not silent treatment, not uh, all of this stuff, but being able to continually assert each person asserting themselves and setting boundaries and you know all of that. It's an ongoing process. Okay, good. Uh, ARA says, Dana, what you said helped. I have this little kid on the playground mentality. I've been bullied into thinking I owe myself to everyone. And then when they mistreat me, I try to run and get trapped. Yes, that's a really great way to put that. And I think a lot of people struggle with that thing because that's that same kind of um, that type of thinking. We owe everybody a fair shot, right? Don't judge a book by its cover. This person could be your next best friend. You just don't know. Oh, they could have this rough exterior, but if you just hang around long enough, if you just tolerate it long enough, then maybe your love can change them or your friendship can change them. Like this is some sort of Hallmark movie, right? And the reality is you don't owe anything to anybody. And it's okay. And this is one of the things that I really feel needs to be taught to kids that isn't. Because it is this mentality with kids of you need to be friends with everybody. And it comes from a good place, right? Like, well, you need to invite everybody to your birthday party. You can't just invite some of the kids. You need to get along with everybody. Oh, if that kid's, um, being mean to you, you need to just take it, kind of a thing. And that's problematic. So it's important that people are able to pick and choose their friends. That's not the real world, right? It's not the real world to like every single person that you work with or to want to spend time with every single person you work with. And nor should it be. There's creeps out there, male and female, in every profession, in every walk of life, and wherever you go. And we've got to be able to discern that. Um, some advice somebody gave to me a long time ago, which helped me to get out of that thinking trap, was I had been dating this guy. Well, not dating. I'd been on a few dates with him, and this guy was like red flag city. Okay, but he hadn't done anything that was egregious. There wasn't anything that was way over that line. It was just a bunch of stuff that didn't sit well with me, and or I should say that's how it came across at the time. Like if I were to run into somebody like him now, within 5 minutes, I would be like, oh, absolutely not. No way. Um, but then I kept wanting to give him the benefit of the doubt. I was feeling too judgmental. I was feeling like I was going to be rude. Who am I, to judge? It felt very superficial because I didn't feel like I had anything of substance to break up with him about. And um, this nurse practitioner I was talking to about it had made a comment. She said, Dana, you don't need, she's like, you've seen this movie before. You don't need to sit all of the way through it to figure out you don't like it. Like you can leave now. You don't need to sit all the way through it before you leave. And it was like this light went on, like, oh my gosh, you're right. You're right. I was so focused on his feelings and well, what if I miss out on a great person? Even though they have all these red flags, it just, that really woke me up and realized, if something's not working for you, it's not working for you. That's it. Yeah. And Marzia says, I give myself permission to set boundaries with people. Yes, absolutely. And here's the kicker too, is if a friendship or a relationship or any of that is going to be healthy, it's going to be because of sincere, honest boundaries from both people. It's not going to be because of a lack of them. So really getting comfortable, it's okay and it's appropriate to know what nourishes you and what drains you. And it takes a little while to kind of get in tune with truly acknowledging when something is uncomfortable. I used to talk about, I used to use the terminology of when we're being abused or when we're being mistreated. And I intentionally backed that up to knowing when we're uncomfortable because it starts there. So I see a lot of people, and I get it because I was there too, that think, okay, if I just learn more about red flags and narcissists and all of this stuff, then I can keep myself safe. And that can help to have, it can help to have some light bulbs go on with learning more about just that validation of what is problematic behavior. But it's, I would say, more important to really get in tune with when you're uncomfortable and to realize that's a very significant um, emotion, that level of discomfort. And that so oftentimes we're socialized to, um, especially in this country, to not, to give other people the benefit of the doubt. We don't want to assume anything. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I can't tell you how many times I have put, created unnecessary anxiety in my life because I haven't wanted to hurt somebody's feelings or I didn't want to be rude. And now it's it's so freeing releasing responsibility of that and being like, you know what? And I'm not saying to be rude, but I'm saying to do what you feel that you need to do in order to protect yourself. So like, for example, if you're walking through a parking lot and it's late at night and um, you hear like rapid footsteps behind you and it freaks you out. It's that, if that freaks you out, that freaks you out. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. It doesn't, it's okay to, get out your mace or to get out your cell phone or to um, turn around and look at the person or to ideally, kind of zigzag and just get out of the way or go back the way you came, whatever you need to do in order to feel safe, instead of being like, well, I don't want that person to think that, um, you know, that I don't want them to be offended or think that I'm crossing the way just because they're a guy or just because they're um, I don't know, dressed a certain way or something. It's, if you make your new standard of I just don't do uncomfortable situations. Like I need to make myself comfortable, and most of the time people don't care. It's sort of like, okay, whatever, I get it. Like if I'm walking rapidly behind somebody, um, if they make some sort of adjustment to their own behavior, I totally get it. I don't blame them at all. And I try to not do that because I don't want to freak people out. That's just one example, right? It's anything. If you're on a date with somebody and you start getting that vibe of, I just don't click with this person, I'm just not comfortable with them, then you don't need to sit there and finish the date. You can excuse yourself and say, um, this is why I'm a big fan of short dates, like coffee, for this reason, because it's a lot easier to just say, you know what, I've only got about 45 minutes or 30 minutes. It's just a meet and greet, and then you go. And then that way it's not this awkward expectation of, dinner and a movie and the whole nine. Let's see. Jennifer says, I'm at work right now. I work in a store. We're not allowed to take back returns or do exchanges, even on recalled items. But every time I have to deny someone, they get mad and I feel so guilty. But I have to remember that it's helping the community as a whole because the virus won't be on those products. And, Jennifer, and it's not your policy. This is just store policy. And I can understand that those chronic feelings of guilt, but they can handle, they can handle their frustration and their emotions with that. You work there, right? Like this is that completely out of your control, not your policy. And I think sometimes reminding yourself that you're not the bad guy. You're the messenger. And she says, "Yeah, assertiveness is not my thing." It it's it definitely takes practice, and it's challenging, and it's amazing how um, many different ways, different realizations we can have um, of different areas that we need to work on with it. Here's an example, a recent example from my life. So the guy I'm dating, we were doing a Zoom last, oh, was it, I don't know, a couple days ago, and I started feeling really panicky about the virus, and I think I might have even been asleep. I don't know. I was because sometimes we'll fall asleep together on Zoom. Anyways, so I was feeling really panicky and very uncomfortable, and um, was talking about the virus, and I had told him earlier, like a day or so earlier, that I was uncomfortable. I was having a lot of anxiety about the virus, and we kind of came up with this whole plan, like how we were going to handle anxiety. And so he starts with, his good intentions of trying to help me handle this anxiety. And it was making things worse for me. Okay. Totally not his fault. This was the plan that we had agreed upon like ahead of time. I thought it would work. He thought it would work. Instead of me asserting myself and saying, you know what, I think I just need to go. Like, I think I just need to go wash my face, or I'm panicking. I just need to go. I was becoming more and more short with him. And because I was panicking, and it was just this feeling of like, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. Um, and so it was rude. I was really short on, about it, like, no, this isn't helping, and stop. I just can't do this. And I was panicking. And I realized, and of course he mentioned it, I think it was the next day, hey, the way that you talked to me was not okay. Like, that was really rude. And he was absolutely right. And I knew it, and I felt horrible. I was so embarrassed about my behavior. And of course I apologized, but I was like, okay, it made me realize what I really needed in that moment was I needed to be able I had painted myself into a corner because I wasn't comfortable enough to saying to him, "Hey, I just need to go right now." Like, there's nothing that anybody else can do. Like, I just need to be alone and panic right now because there's for me, there's no coming down from this spot right now. I just need a few minutes. So it's amazing. It all of the different ways that it can come across of art, how we need to be assertive and what we really need. When that's been buried within you for so long, it just takes time, and it takes situations like this to realize, oh my gosh, yes, here's yet another way of issues I have with assertiveness. So like, I get it. I get it. So hold on just a second. Okay. Jennifer says, my logical brain knows that's true, but my emotional brain feels like I have some sort of responsibility to make exceptions or something. Um, yeah. And I think everybody that struggles with assertiveness feels that same way. It's that kind of ongoing guilt that comes along with blurred boundaries and that imbalance. When we're more on that people pleasing side of the spectrum, whenever we say no, we feel guilty all the time. Even like we were talking about with your situation at the store, it's not your policy, you know, you work there. And even if it was your policy, there's valid reasons for it right now. Frankly, those people shouldn't even be going to the store to return stuff, you know? we're not in a normal, uh, this is extreme circumstances right now. So it's getting that those feelings of what are you accountable for? What are you responsible for? Where do you start and end? And where does somebody else start and end? And getting clear with those boundaries can help with those feelings of inappropriate guilt. And also asking yourself, is this appropriate guilt or is this inappropriate guilt? And helping to clarify within yourself. Appropriate guilt, you know, if you did something wrong and then you feel bad about it. Inappropriate guilt is when we've done nothing wrong, but yet we still feel bad about it. And oftentimes the thing that we've done has been setting a boundary or being assertive or just telling somebody no, like in your situation. So then we can, it can help to sort out, okay, this is inappropriate guilt. I did nothing wrong. Um, and then just kind of thinking about that, like, where is this coming from? Something that can help with that is also to to kind of play the situation through and ask yourself, well, well, so what? Like, well, what does this mean? Okay, if this person gets really upset with you, okay, then what? This is a really great exercise to kind of get to those root um, core issues. Is it the feeling of um, they're not going to like me, or they're gonna um, I'm gonna. Here's an example. So I had this was I don't know, a counseling class I had, and it was it was crisis and trauma, and it was about practicing. Um, it was about practicing confrontation, and if you had to tell somebody that you had to call CPS or that you had to break confidentiality, how you were going to handle that, and it was so interesting. So we would role play these different scenarios, and so one person would pretend to be the counselor, the other person would pretend to be a client that was not handling it well, who was freaking out. What are you trying to do? You're trying to ruin my life. I can't believe you're doing this to me. What, you don't know anything. Oh, thanks for nothing. I guess, blah, blah, blah. And just really going off on a tangent. And the whole exercise was to practice kind of staying in control when we were feeling very out of control. And part of that exercise was realizing, okay, what's going through your mind when somebody starts talking to you like this? Because most people tend, it just flashes you back to when you're a kid. And when you've been scolded like that, whether it was at school or you had I don't know, you had a coworker when you were older, or a sibling or a parent or whoever that struck fear into you, those situations tend to come up. And it was so interesting to have different people in the class would perceive it differently. Some people were like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid, like, what if they're right? What if I'm wrong? What if I'm a terrible therapist? What if well, what if I lose a client? What if they tell all these other people, and what if my clients stop trusting me, and I go out of business? Or um, what if I really am making things worse? What if calling CPS really does, set up this chain of events? And it was interesting kind of getting clear on all of those worries, and then going back to, okay, what do you have control over? What do you not have control over? And okay, so how are you going to handle this? Like, if this person, um, so what if this customer gets upset with you and they don't like you? Like, work, kind of playing that scenario out. Okay, they don't like you, then what? You know, um, that they're a stranger. They don't know you well enough to not like you. They just don't like that they can't get their way. So not taking it personally. Mm, um, Good for you, truth seeker. Says, I had to explain to a lady who gave me a snobby face when I asked for some space that I'm protecting us both. I'm glad I said that to her. I never would have before. That's I love that. That's a great victory. It's those little moments of, yeah, I can't be responsible for your feelings. I need to be doing the right thing. And I'm doing the right thing. And so I can't, I have to be able to do what I feel is the right thing within the context of, healthy and appropriate boundaries, standards, and deal breakers, and let the rest go. We can't be responsible for other people's feelings, especially after we assert ourselves, because most people, ourselves included, it's uncomfortable. Confrontation is uncomfortable. Setting boundaries and being told no or telling somebody no, it's uncomfortable. It's the natural response to that is to get defensive. So just kind of realizing that all goes hand in hand. Um, let's see. Charlie says, "Hey, can I ask your opinion on MGTOW? Like anything in particular, or just as in general?" I guess I'll just give you a general opinion on it. So I think the root of MGTOW, I think a lot of men that tend to find that movement and join it, it comes from a lot of hurt. And some of it is it's like, I think with any kind of somewhat extreme movement, you have people in there that have truly been hurt, and then you have people that have very skewed um, expectations, and that and their expectations are the problem, but they just don't get it. Or they're the way that they're uh, it's other factors at work that are the issue. um, so my concern, you know here's my thing, like, if you're getting in a relationship, male or female, I think it's important to just go slowly and to protect yourself emotionally, physically, and financially. Again, whether you're a male or a female. um, I don't think all women are gold diggers, just like I don't think all men, um, are cheaters or awful or whatever. Um, my concern Here's my concern. My concern with the hurt men that tend to find and follow the MGTOW movement is oftentimes they feel like they're doing so because they've been hurt and they're doing this as a way to protect themselves. If this is the case, and I think it is for a lot of them, then they're still missing a big part of the picture, which is it's hurtful behavior that hurts. It's not just society or women or anything like this. That's hurtful women hurt, right? So or toxic women cause toxic problems in a relationship. But it's important to see the fuller picture of just toxic behavior in general, because it can come at you at work and at wherever, if you volunteer, if you're your hobbies, wherever. So my concern for people is just seeing the full range of problematic behavior for what it is, regardless of age, gender, nationality, religion, and so on. Because the flip side of that is women tend to do something similar where they'll be like, oh, you know what, I'm never dating again, men are scum. All men do this, right? They cheat, they lie, they do X, Y, and Z, and then they become very disenfranchised when this happens to them, with somebody at church or in their work environment or a friend. And men experience the same thing. So, yeah. Jack says, I looked into both the men's rights movement and MGTOW partly because of my narcissistic mother and because in some ways the legal deck is stacked against us. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Both men and women have challenges in just different ways. So, and it depends on the judge and it depends where you are. But yes, I would agree by and large, there's a lot of issues that men have with the court system as far as getting um, custody or visitation or what have you. So, uh, and that's heartbreaking, especially when the woman is abusive. Um, so, but I'm not a big fan, of course, of the whole kind of um, a lot of the tenets behind MGTOW that kind of paint women as the problem because it's not women. And I think once there's one group that's it's just dangerous. It's just really, it just doesn't work either. That's the thing. To really kind of demonize one group or to say this one group of people you just need to stay away from because it's that problematic behavior in general that we need to be aware of. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents for the 2 cents that it's worth, I guess. Changing my life says I used to have that mentality about men when I was young, even before I started dating. So I never thought about what I wanted from a man since I had no standards. Yeah. Yeah. That's this stuff, boundaries, standards, deal breakers, this stuff is not taught to the extent that it really needs to be. And like we were talking about earlier, the opposite tends to be taught of giving other people the benefit of the doubt and forgive and forget and kind of assume the best in people and trust, love like you've never been hurt before and all of this stuff. And it's a lot of really bad advice because there's no context around that. So, uh, it's important to get clear, to start off with knowing when what's comfortable for you and what's uncomfortable for you. And how does that fit in with your boundary standards and deal breakers? There's certain times discomfort can be good for facing a new challenge, we're learning a new skill. There's other times where it's not necessary and the risk is greater than the reward. We're again walking alone in a parking lot and we feel like we're being followed or whatever, something like that that's uncomfortable. We've got to be able to kind of discern the differences and um, treat ourselves with value. And there's a lot of this stuff too. Men are not taught this either. So like we were talking about, there's certain things, different things tend I don't know, society sets men and women up to fail in different ways. Okay. But with the personal safety thing, a lot of that stuff isn't taught to men, especially men. And so for them getting in tune with what's uncomfortable for them is also a really big challenge because they don't tend to think about women. We tend to get hammered home about this. You've got to make sure, you got your keys out, you know where you parked, you walk with purpose, you have mace, you let people know where you're going when you're going on a date, these kinds of things. Well, it's just as equally as important for men. And there's a lot of guys that don't think twice about walking down a dark alley or, um, you know, they just don't take the precautions because it hasn't been hammered home to them. And things happen to men too. So just how to protect ourselves in general as people is not taught to the level it needs to be taught. Let's see here. Changing My Life says with racism, especially how it's rising right now for Asians, they are not the problem. Yeah, I agree. That's troublesome to see that. It's in large part the Chinese Communist Party that's been a big part of this with keeping things quiet. The Chinese peo It impresses me that people are willing to literally put their lives at risk to get video and pictures out of what things are really like over there. So, that means so much, and it's just tragic that they have a government that's keeping things that's just lying, that's just flat out lying about things, and I guess you could kinda make the argument for a lot of governments tend to do that or suppress things or kind of tell the masses what they need to be told in order to keep calm. But yeah, the violence against Asians or Chinese people is ridiculous and absurd and just ignorant. I mean, come on, come on. It's just frustrating. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Yeah, Jennifer says, the town next to me, a guy went missing last Christmas. I don't think he told anyone where he was going, but he went to go meet up with a guy and ended up getting murdered. Women are always told to tell people where they're going to their family. I wish men were taught the same, but it's this weird assumption that they can defend themselves at all cost. Yeah. Yep. I agree. Especially in this day and age, with the internet, people can pretend to be anything. There was one serial killer out there who was pretending to be a woman on dating sites and was luring men back into his house. And of course, he had it all planned out where he had the garage door. Um, he'd lure them into the garage basically and then attack them. So these things do happen to men, and just because they might be bigger or stronger doesn't mean that they can't be overpowered by somebody with, malicious intent. My brothers always get on me because I'm like, well, where are you going and when are you going to be back? And, who are you going to be out with? And just humor me and let me know. And, don't just fall off the map. And, yeah, but, or call me when you get there or call me when you get home, stuff like that. It's, you just don't know. Bon Avi asks, how can we protect our kids from their disrespectful mother? And why does I'm not sure if I understand the second part of that question. Why does woman violence similar to all women? Okay, so I'll answer the first part because I'm not sure what you mean by the second part, but the how can we protect our kids from their disrespectful mother? Um, I would say, is this disrespectful mother your wife? I'm assuming it's your wife. If if that's the case, then I would pull your wife aside and there needs to be a conversation had about appropriate and inappropriate behavior. And ideally, with a married couple, that it really helps to be on the same team. So you are kind of a unified approach, you're a unified voice when it comes to, um, you know, interacting with the children. So it's not pitting one partner against the other kind of a thing. So if it's, uh, and of course, that's probably not going to go over well, right? If you mention it to her about her behavior, um, I don't know. That's really tough because you can't make her change, and I don't know your culture or any other details, but, uh, I guess I would just start getting clearer on kind of what deal breaker stuff is for you. And as far as the kids go, this is really difficult because um, it can just more inflame things more than anything else. But depending on the age of your children, too, um, and I just don't, I don't know. I mean, are you married? Are you divorced? Uh, how is the mother disrespecting them? Like these kinds of things. You can try to run interference and do kind of this corrective parenting where you're letting them know, you're at least validating them and saying like that's not okay, that's not appropriate for that, for your mom to talk to you like that. Um, you know, you're validating them if they're coming to you and they're upset, these kinds of things. You can talk to their mother about her behavior, um, but it's just really difficult because you can't uh, the only thing that you really have control over is yourself in the situation and not her. And so that's where it gets to the point of, okay, well, where's your line with things? And even then, assuming that you are married, even if you aren't, um, if you're not divorced, uh, and even if you do get divorced, it's still gonna go on. So it's because you don't have control over her. So yeah, I guess I would encourage you to talk to your children and work on building their self-esteem, uh, in in other ways. So let's say, for example, if she's kind of consistently disrespectful to them in certain ways, like, oh, you can't do anything right, why do I have to keep telling you to clean your room, oh, you're never going to learn, blah blah blah, to kind of counteract that behavior by catching them doing things right and commenting on that. Oh, you're so clever, you figured out this puzzle, or I'm really proud of you for getting yourself up on time, or great job with getting your homework done without me having to ask, or with me only having to ask once, or whatever it might be. Just you're catching them doing things right. That can really help. One of the biggest things with kids is having a uh, a healthy bond with a significant adult in their life. So we can't there's only so much that we can do. And there's been studies on this with different attachment theories and uh, helping kids to develop resiliency in kind of difficult home life type situations, all the way difficult home life situations all the way through to like abuse and neglect. And studies have found that it's not so much that, yes, it is significant that there is ideally a healthy, nourishing bond with um, their primary caregiver or caregivers. It's as equally as important that there is some sort of significant adult in that child's life, whether it be um, a coach, a teacher, the other parent, somebody that they feel comfortable with, that they can go to for support and validation, and all of that is really key. So I would say working on building your relationship with your child, um, really making sure that they feel safe, secure, validated, heard, that you keep communication open with them, these kinds of things, that is within what you can control. Let's see. Truth Seeker says society would shame children for not having resiliency rather than giving them the tools to learn it. Shame on the shamer. Yes. And hopefully, I think we're coming into a time. in society where a kind of emotional intelligence is becoming, um, the value in it is being more readily seen. And there's quite a few schools, at least here in Michigan, that have curriculum that's designed for emotional intelligence for children, starting in elementary school, which is really exciting because these skills aren't taught. And resilience is one of those. I mean, all, like all of this stuff, right? It's we just leave it all up to chance. Life inherently is full of change and it's full of trauma. It's just part of being alive. Problems are part of being alive. And but we don't give people the skill set in order to actually adjust and adapt and cope with those problems. And then we wonder why things go wrong. And um, there's all these issues out there with depression and anxiety and stress and physical health and behavioral challenges and all kinds of stuff. Okay, let's see. Jennifer. Here's the thing too, before we move on to Jennifer's question, with resiliency, with kids especially, um, they really tend to look to adults for not only how adults handle things, like physically, problem solving kind of things, but how they handle things emotionally. And how you handle things is everything is being role modeled for a child. Everything, every adult that a child is being around is teaching them what acceptable behavior is. That's what can be so scary. So, and especially if you're trying to parallel parent or co-parent with a problematic person, or you have a living situation where there's extended family living in the house or that are over all the time, that are pretty much working against you. They're just doing whatever they want to do and they're disregarding your rules or how you want to raise your children or what have you. um, so kind of keeping that in mind, and it can help with children, um, of all ages, to when we think about it in terms of, okay, this is going to be a teachable moment. um, if you have something stressful, to talk about it with them in an age appropriate way, right? But kind of thinking, okay, well, what are some options here? How could I have handled this? And owning it. If you don't handle it correctly or how you would want to have handled it ideally, owning it and saying, you know what, boy, gosh, you know what, I really lost it back there in traffic. And I was so upset and I said some things I shouldn't have said. How else could I have handled that? And then letting your kid come up with some alternative ways and just talking it through and showing, you know what, yeah, I don't always handle things perfectly, but it's important for me to be accountable for it and to really make a concerted effort to doing it different next time. That's how kids learn. And so yeah. Okay. Okay, Jennifer says, is there a psychological term for seeing the logic in a situation, but also the emotional other side of it, and not being able to settle into the logical side being the right side? Maybe it's brainwashing. Can EMDR help with that? What would be the term for that? Outside of cognitive dissonance? I'd have to think. I don't know. Does anybody, can you think of a term? Um, I don't know. The patterns, um, whenever we tend to make, if there's that pattern of decision making, right, where like again, back to the customer example, that logically that this is not your fault, right? That you're not the bad guy here. You're just the messenger. This is just store policy, and that you're not going to own this. Um, but you can see, you have that empathy. You're like, I get it. I get why you're frustrated, right? Like, we're in the middle of major scary changes in the world. You want to get your money back. Money's tight. You're probably not working. You can get where they're coming from. Um, and then, but then being kind of caught in that middle of that guilt or um, what have you. I guess if anything, I would say that has more to do with that imbalance of that tends to be more of that codependent kind of behavior, um, and working on that. So I don't know. I'll be curious to see what do other. Yeah, AM says rationalizing, and Truth Seeker saying, yeah, cognitive dissonance when parts of yourself are fighting each other about something. Okay, Jennifer was saying, yeah, I asked because I know what my dad did to me was legally and logically wrong, but it's hard for me to emotionally feel that way because he took care of me and my sisters so well in other ways. There was healthy food, there was a roof over our head, he helped with homework, doing my hair for ballet, etc. Yes, and so that would be an example of that cognitive dissonance, and that's how, um, and that's hard. That's really difficult. It's And so when we keep smoothing that dissonance over, because here's the thing, people that do horrible things, we have this idea as a society that they must just be horrible people across the board. And oftentimes they're not. There's always there's generally some sort of redeeming character trait about someone. Maybe they're funny, maybe they're smart, maybe they're a great cook, maybe they're really loving parents when they're sober. Maybe, the BTK killer, by most reports of his daughter, he was a really great father. You know, um, Bill Cosby, uh, um, what's his name? Ted Bundy. So I think that Ted Bundy's girlfriend especially really went through that because she never saw that side of him. He was wonderful to her and to her little girl. And she was the one that called him in because she's like, there's just too many similarities here. And so she had to sort through all of those emotions. But when you're talking about in your type of situation, when there is sexual abuse involved, it's the level of manipulation and the level of confusion is so high, so high. That's really just part of it that tends to go along um, with sexual abuse. And a lot of it, when you're seeing the really good side in this person who might be doing really wonderful things, 95% of the time, but those 5% of the time is really profoundly hurtful. A lot of that 95% of the time tends to be their way of trying to make themselves trying to ease their own cognitive dissonance and trying to make themselves feel like they're actually still a really good parent after all. So even the good times are still part of the manipulation, whether or not it's intentional or unintentional on their behalf. So the wide range of emotions that you feel is completely normal. It's normal to be confused, and it's hard. It's hard to to kind of mourn the loss or to accept the loss of um, this person. He did horrible things, but at the same time he was still your father. And so having to kind of grieve the loss of the father, but then also handle that anger and the betrayal and all of that, it's a lot to sift and sort through. There was John Wayne Gacy. I was watching a documentary about him, and he was a serial killer, and his sister it just struck me so interesting. One of the things that she had said was, after he um, was put to death, um, she was like, yes, the world lost a serial killer, but she lost her brother. She didn't know that side of him. And she had a lot of fond memories of him growing up. And so it was, so she had different feelings that she had to process. And it's the same with any type of relationship where there's that duality present. It's confusing. It's why people tend to stay in abusive relationships too for as long as they do. There's this idea that abusive people are like the bad guy and sleeping with the enemy that, never smiles. He's really stern, really strict. He's just a jerk. Everybody can see this jerk coming a mile away. Oftentimes, abusive people are not like that. They tend to come across as uh, there's a whole range. There's just a whole range of personalities. And so that can be confusing if what we experience is different than what we think it should be or what we think an abusive person can be like. But that whole cultivating a relationship, especially with sexual abusers, that's part of it, is they do tend to cultivate a relationship with a child or various children. And afterwards, it leaves that child feeling very confused. Were they to blame? Did they do something wrong? They should have said something. There's a lot of shame and guilt and embarrassment and confusion and hurt and anger and all of it. Okay, let's see. And, Jennifer, that makes sense. She says, comparing my dad to my mom, who's manic bipolar, makes it worse because I think the turmoil she put me and my sister through and everyone else around her, I almost think of that as being worse. I feel guilty about that because she has a mental illness. And I hope that as an adult now that you can look back on this and see through the eyes of a child, through Jennifer at age 6 or age 8, to have compassion for yourself and to be like, okay, you were in this very, um, gosh, chaotic, terrifying, traumatizing situation where there was no peace at home, right? You've got mom who's sounds like unmedicated and very unpredictable behavior and chaotic and scary, and you just didn't know what you were walking into ever. And then you have dad who might have been more stable emotionally, but who was incredibly hurtful sexually and psychologically and also emotionally, but in a different way. And so if that kind of sexual predator is your rock in the storm, then there is no real safe place. And as a kid, it's sort of, we're all kind of hardwired to try to make the best of a situation. And they call it like surviving our childhood. And it's kind of just getting through childhood to age 18 till we can start getting out of there. And yeah, yeah, it's hard when you don't have, there's no real safe person growing up. You know, her, her behavior, feeling guilty about thinking that your mom's behavior is worse because it's a mental illness. So it's not a choice, right? I think that's where that guilt comes from. Like, I'm holding mom accountable for behavior that's not her choice. Whereas I feel like I'm wanting to let behavior with dad slide, even though it was a choice with him. With With your mom's behavior, I don't know, my guess is that her insight was probably pretty poor if she felt like she didn't need to be on medication, if she just didn't see the damage that her behavior was causing her. That's tragic. Um, I can see how you would be kind of more upset because it sounds like there was more ongoing chaos with her. Whereas with dad, it was those periodic times that you could try to minimize or kind of repress or deny, but there was more stability, outside or on a more regular basis. Jennifer says, I have no idea why I felt grateful that it wasn't worse when I was a kid, because looking back as an adult, I just think, wow, how did I survive that? Yeah, I think that's easy to do, to look around at what other people go through, not even as children, even as adults. That's probably the number one thing I've heard time and time again from people that are in some type of abusive relationship of there's that shame of, but I could have had it worse. Like other people have it worse. So I'm being ungrateful. Or I should just be happy that it wasn't worse than it was. And that's so invalidating of what we went through. And I think it is important that you take the time to acknowledge that and to kind of get back in tune with your younger self and to acknowledge, like, you know what, kid, you survived this. This was a really tough spot. It would be profoundly difficult for anybody to handle, you know? It's amazing. It's amazing what people can make it through. Yeah, Jennifer says, yeah, legally we couldn't get her on medication just because she had no insight to it. She just wreaked havoc when she went manic. Yeah, I had a good friend who's had somewhat of a similar home life. Her mother had, or still has, paranoid schizophrenia and has no insight into when she's not doing well, which is often. And so she's not medicated. And she grew up, she has, I think there's a total of 6 kids. And those kids basically had to raise themselves. And it was just awful. The dad was a truck driver, so he was rarely there. And the mom was not safe and would have all these ideas that this one child in particular was evil and that she needed to kill him. And they would record her, saying, talking to voices and plotting things against him. And they were in and out of foster homes pretty much their whole life. It's just, some of the stuff that people go through, it's just heartbreaking. And um, it's just really cool. It's inspiring that she is where she is today. And, but, there's still a lot of stuff that she's got to work through. It's ongoing. And everybody's got stuff. That's the thing. Everybody's got stuff from their childhood or just traumas in general that happen. It's part of life. And like we were talking about earlier, this whole concept of resiliency or how to process, how to even get in tune with our emotions, let alone process them. This stuff's not common knowledge. And even the knowledge that we do have, we're at the forefront of all of this. So what works for one person might not work for somebody else. So there is no one size fits all approach to healing. And um, yeah, it's just a challenge. Kitty Nico says hello. I love you. Yes, I've been watching for a few years, but I've never seen a live stream. Well, welcome. We're glad to have you. Let's see here. Let me scroll up. Real quick, back to Jennifer, what you were saying about thinking, how did I survive that? Um, One of the questions that was asked to me a while ago that I've been kind of mulling around for quite a while was somebody had asked, what is the difference between grieving and a pity party? And I have thought and thought and thought and thought about this. And I finally came to the conclusion that I think having a pity party, well, first of all, I think that's kind of a dysphomism for, or a negatively phrased way of saying that we're getting in tune with our emotions, so that we're feeling sorry for ourselves, right? But there's situations that we all go through where that really is the first part in healing, is to acknowledge, like, oh my gosh, I am so that I feel sympathy for the younger version of me, even if the younger version of me was last week, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry this happened, and just acknowledging the pain and the hurt and uh, all of it. So, but unfortunately, we don't really getting in tune with those emotions is often labeled as a pity party. But really, I feel like that pity party is just a stage in grieving. And it's an important stage in grieving because we have to admit that this was not okay. This was incredibly painful. It wasn't right and it wasn't fair. And, um, it hurt and it sucks. And just being like, yeah, just acknowledging all of kind of the injustice of the situation and having sympathy for what we went through is important. It's important to get in tune with those emotions. There's nothing wrong with that. It becomes a problem if we stay there, but it's okay to be there, to be in that place and to acknowledge what happened. Let's see. Free from narcissistic abuse says narcissists don't care if they put your life in danger. The healthcare system right now is not letting them wear clean N95 masks taking care of coronavirus patients. We had one of our nurses fired because she would not take care of the coronavirus patients unless she had an N95 mask to wear every time. She made the news tonight and she went to the media. Yeah, good for her. I agree. I agree. As a former nurse, what gets me is, and I actually quit my last job because of this, where it was that mentality of, yeah, this is a dangerous environment. We do dangerous work. This is what you signed up for. And the reality is, no, that's not what I signed up for. Yes, we do take care of patients. Yes, we are sometimes in dangerous situations, but that danger really has to be like monitored and mitigated. If we were with a dangerous patient or a patient that we were concerned was going to be dangerous, we didn't go alone. We had security. We had precautions in place. This whole expectation that the healthcare workers, that this is what they signed up for, and um, kind of bashing on them for not wanting to go to work or for quitting or what have you, if they're not offered the gloves and masks and stuff, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And it makes me so angry because I know from that nurse's perspective of all of the garbage that nurses in particular are fed. And it's this I remember at nursing school graduation, we had the whole Florence Nightingale. There was a whole Florence Nightingale poem or something or other. And it literally is like this oath to being a martyr. Like it's an oath to putting everybody else first and putting yourself last. And I remember thinking at the time, like, this is really unhealthy. Like, this is not what I'm signing up for. Like, I'm here to take care of people, but my life has value too. And it's frustrating when um, it's you're treated like you're not, that you're just there. Yeah, it gets me. I don't understand what the deal is with masks. I understand that there's a shortage of supplies and everything, but something is better than nothing. And I don't blame her for saying like, hey, I'm only going to work if there's N95 masks available. If there's not, then I need to be transferred to another unit because, you know, like I'm not trying to fall on my sword here either. We've got to figure something out. And I would have really had a problem with that a couple years ago. I would have felt guilty for not continuing to put myself in harm's way. When I quit my last job, it was because of that. It was because of multiple dangerous situations, uh, highly violent. I mean, they're really, really way across the line kind of stuff. And it was not being handled well. And I struggled with guilt, with inappropriate guilt for a long time of I'm a nurse. I love certain, the vast majority of my patients I are really enjoyable. I love being able to make a difference and to be able to help and to, um, just to do this job. Like I really enjoy it. But man, this, there comes a point where like, this is not reasonable to stay in this environment. These are the flags. Like, these are the signs, you know? Yeah, it's frustrating. Okay. Um, that's an interesting take on it. I could see that, Susanna. She says, okay, grieving is a genuine, recognized loss of something or someone. Pity party is a selfish stance that someone feels heavily victimized over any little thing. Two different sets of feelings and mindsets. Okay, but I could also counter that because people feel how they feel. And sometimes people, oh no, we don't know where other people's boundaries are. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, where a person can feel heavily victimized, but we don't know what their past was. So maybe us saying a certain thing, teasing them in a certain way, or saying no about a certain thing, or what have you, that really triggered something within them. And so by our perspective, we think that they're feeling heavily victimized over something insignificant, but when in reality, it's significant to them. I'll be curious. I don't know. I'll be curious to what you think about that. Oh, she says, okay, agree. See my next post. Oh, okay. Let's see. Let me scroll down here. She says, my mom manipulated me and my siblings into adulthood using pity parties. Yet my siblings and I truly grieved after her death. Okay. Do you think your mom's pity parties, I'm sure that, well, like you said, the intention was to manipulate. Um, do you think that she really felt victimized or hurt? Because I think a lot of people that have a real skewed sense of boundaries tend to legitimately feel hurt and offended over things that for what we would consider to be inappropriate reasons, because their expectations aren't appropriate to begin with. Like, for example, I had a friend years and years ago who her mother was very manipulative and very clingy and didn't want her to go to college, and um, would did all kinds of things. You're going to leave me. You don't love me. How am I going to do all the stuff by myself? And who am I going to turn to? And you're the baby, and now you're leaving. And oh my gosh, and blah, blah, blah. All this guilt heaping on her. And uh, it almost worked. My friend really, really struggled for a long time, but she did. She left home, went to college, and ended up going for her PhD, or getting her PhD. Um, and moved far away. But it was really difficult for her. But her mom, I really do feel that her mom felt victimized in that. But her mom's expectations of uh, kind of her boundaries of where she began, where she started and ended as a person, and where other people started and ended, was really skewed. So she really had this idea that the world owed her one, and that her daughter should live at home and take care of her forever. And that, a lot of um, abusive people in general, that's kind of their mentality. It's just that really skewed mentality of, well, I had to lash out at you because you didn't do something you did something I didn't approve of. And then they're shocked when they get held accountable, especially by the police or the court system, for their behavior, because in their mind they did nothing wrong. So I don't know. The survivalist says, yeah, shaming tactics to manipulate and control. And Susanna says sometimes it was truly, and other times she would get mad if it didn't work to get her way. Yeah. Jennifer says, yeah, so many people seem to think that their kids owe them something. Yep, I agree. And it's such backward logic, right? Like, your child didn't ask to be born. Um, the it bothers me so much when parents kind of lord kind of basics over a child's head. Well, I gave you life. I gave you food, clothing, and shelter. It's like, well, yes, legally you needed to, but yes, thank you for that. Um, like, I don't know what you want me to say. That's your job. That's not a gift that you gave to me. That was your job. So it's frustrating. Let's see, let me scroll up here. Oh, it's so scary. Jennifer says, yeah, one of my old classmates from high school is a nurse, and she got COVID-19 and now has to leave her family and kids to quarantine for 30 days. And she truly thinks she won't make it. I really hope people are staying home. They're enforcing a curfew tomorrow in my city. Oh my goodness. That's so heartbreaking. I worry. I also have so many nurse friends who have kids, and it's just, I can imagine the fear and the uh, just all of it. There was a video I saw earlier today from I think it was I think it was an ICU nurse, who was saying, she's like, I've aged 20 years in the past 2 weeks. I'm exhausted, and um, it's nonstop, and it's your adrenaline is always on the whole shift, because you just don't know what's going to happen. Well, you have an idea of what's going to happen, and it's not going to be good. And just that level of stress for 12 hours at a time, and just no days off, and all of it. It's a lot. It's a lot. I really do hope that people are staying home. And when you guys are staying home with groceries, this virus can live on plastic for up to 3 days. It can live on cardboard for a day. It can, um, so just really making sure if you bring groceries in, if you have a garage, or if you can leave them in your trunk, depending on the weather or what you buy, leave them in there for a couple days. If it's, dried goods or what have you, if you're going to bring them in, leave them in the garage. At a minimum, for sure, you still want to wash them all down. Getting a sink full of warm, soapy water and just washing them all down is a big, it's time consuming, but it's important. Washing your hands on a regular basis. If you're going to be leaving the house for anything, it's a good idea to just hop in the shower as soon as you get home, put your clothes straight into the, um, washing area. If you don't have a washing machine, like a lot of, or if you don't want to, do laundry, uh, do a whole load for one pair of clothes or something, bring your clothes with you into the shower and just wash all that stuff down and then hang them up in the shower. Something. Um, but staying at home, social distancing, even if you're staying at home with people, still practice that social distancing. So it's scary times, but thankfully we at least have an idea of what we need to do from this point forward. And I really hope that they crack down on, they just start shutting stuff down. Like I don't know why there's still air travel. Like that needs to be stopped. Unless it's people, well, even then, but unless it's people going, flying into, New York to help. But even then they need to be in quarantine, you know? I don't know. It's Yeah, it's just frustrating. Jennifer says, I work in a grocery store. And when this all started, it was very, very stressful, and it still is. But nurses, that's a whole other level. They're still at a high level of stress, constant. I said, I think I read somewhere that 20% of the victims are in the medical industry. Uh, I could see that. However, I would say it's as equally stressful in a grocery store. It's a different type of stress, but you've got people that, at least in a hospital setting, you're more prepared for it. And grocery store kind of stuff, man, hats off to you, because that really would be scary. People, because people, they get bored and they seem to be going to the grocery store, you know, and it's like, just stay home. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. The survivalist says, I use some bleach water in a mister or spray bottle. I also use UV lights at the entrances to my house. It handles 99.9% of all contaminants. I didn't realize they had you. Is that something that you made? The UV lights for like your doorway? Or is there a setup that you bought? Because I've been wanting, especially when I was a nurse, really wanting some sort of shoe rack that had UV lights in it, that you can take your shoes off and just place on that shoe rack and then turn that on and have a timer or something where it goes off in 5 minutes. Because that always freaked me out coming home from, the emergency room or wherever we happened to be, especially during clinicals. Montana says, wow, I didn't know that about plastic and cardboard. Shoot, I will from now on. My particular abuser took everything, so I'm starting over with things like TV, etc. So I'm not totally up on everything. Oops. And it makes sense. The information is changing on a regular basis. So that's um, that's what I've heard the latest. There's a wonderful video. I should actually put it on my website now that I'm thinking about it. I posted it on the Facebook group from a doctor who doctor here in Michigan, who talks about how kind of how to use the concept of a sterile field for every day, and kind of how things are done in like a surgery area, and how we can use that when we do groceries. So yeah, there's been a lot of kind of guessing and misinformation around out there, but yeah, it's important. Even with masks, they're kind of going back and forth with or without masks. I bought a pack of bandanas on Amazon for like $12, and it's something. It's something. And it's better than nothing. I like the bandanas actually better than the masks, because a lot of the masks will have gaps on the side, whereas the bandana goes all the way down to your neck and it covers your nose and your mouth. But something is better than nothing at this time, since there's a shortage of things. Kevin says that feels like a raccoon washing our food. Yes. Yes, it does. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I agree. Kamami says, in France, so many cashiers died. They worked in grocery shops, and in order to avoid the scaring customers, they were not allowed to wear any masks. And it's a shame. It's a sin. Yep, I agree. I think there's going to be a lot of lawsuits after, uh, not after maybe, but once this virus gets under control, because it is ridiculous, and there are people that need to go to work and they can't afford to quit, and they're being put in these kind of Sophie's choice type situations every single day going to work, and it's traumatic. It's incredibly traumatic and terrifying. The Watchman's Eyes says, are the items from Amazon sent from China? Some of them are probably. There's warehouses, at least here in the United States, they're all over the United States. So by the time those items probably come from China and then get shelved and everything, there's probably a good at least 3-day period of time before they're sent to us. It's still a good idea to take that stuff, and if you have a garage or a corner of your apartment or something else, to just leave those boxes over there for, I would say, 3 days. The box itself is cardboard, but the inside is plastic, and people have been touching the plastic because they've been packing the boxes. So it's I would just wear I'm just a big err on the side of caution kind of gal. So even with your mail, when you're anything that's causing a lot of like particles kicking up, I'm just a big fan. Just put a bandana on around your face, some sort of fabric around your face. If you're wear gloves, if you're not going to wear gloves, just wash your hands afterwards. So yeah. Let's see here. Oh, good. I'm glad. Jennifer says, yeah, we're getting plexiglass installed this week for the registers at least. Yeah, that's good. I've seen quite a few people who are um, using 3D printing and making supplies. And of course, there's like tons of people that are making masks now, which is awesome. And I don't know, hopefully we'll have a better grasp on like the supplies that we need in the near future here. Yeah, people are talking about the masks, and a lot of places are doing it, or telling employees to not wear them because it looks like it kind of gives off this hostile vibe to customers. I was thinking last night, I'm like, if that's the concern, which I can see the logic behind it, I definitely don't. I think people understand. I don't think that logic supports the actions that are being taken. Um, but I think if that's the logic, then people could get just white material. You could draw you could draw a funny mustache on it, right? Like you can make it, it doesn't have to be this like serious, scary thing with masks. Like you could you could make a big smiley face on it. You could write a little word bubble that says hello on it. I mean, there's things that you could do. But I really feel I get upset when I go into the grocery store and I see the cashiers, they're not wearing masks because I worry about them. And I think it's ridiculous that they have that anybody's uh, being expected to be at risk like that. Flower Child says, my son-in-law is making shields for doctors in the ER here in Las Vegas. We need 10,000. He can only make a handful. He's not a manufacturer. He's an engineer with a 3D printer. There's quite a few people out there with these 3D printers that are doing stuff like that. It's so cool. I wonder if there's, if they have like some sort of spec sheet from the hospitals that show the design. Like this is what they'll allow to be used by hospitals. And if they can share those designs, I would think on Facebook or someplace where there's a 3D printing group of other people that have 3D printers where they could all kind of, work together. I don't know. The 3D printer, I just don't understand how that stuff works. I need to sit down and watch some YouTube videos about it because it looks really, really cool. And what a benefit to be able to use something like that now to help out, like that the whole kind of crowdsourcing and open sourcing of ideas, of getting talented people, all of the engineers of the world, right? Or all of the seamstresses of the world together to help with supplies is just, that's so cool. That's a really great point, Elizabeth. She says, due to the illness characteristics, the lockdown will last months. I try to take care of my mental health. Yes. Yes, that's good. And that's a significant, um, taking care of our mental health and trying to keep stress low. It helps our immune system. That's one of the most significant things I think a person can potentially do outside of, washing hands and kind of the basic or the hygiene protocols for all of this, is to really be aware of your stress and trying to actively and intentionally work on reducing it. So even though the world is changing on an hourly basis, it seems, limiting yourself to how much you're reading, how much you're absorbing about the coronavirus. Because yes, while things might be changing, basically we already know what we need to be doing at this point in time. Stay at home, get groceries delivered if you can, or get curbside pickup if you can, wash everything down, ideally wear some sort of facial covering, um, social distancing. Now is the time to eat warm food. The virus um, uh, doesn't survive in high temperatures. So, making, I don't know, like a big lasagna, something that's easy to freeze, something that's easy to warm up, uh, these kinds of things. This is the time for warmer foods, soups, um, these kinds of things. Truth Seeker says rice lasts forever. Uh, Bella says, I feel helpless and I feel like I can lose my faith. I just cry every day. I cry every day because of my narcissistic family. Changing my life says, I'm vegan. I live in salads. Yeah. And Bonnie was saying, yeah, I can't even go to church. Churches are closed down too, parks, everything. Yeah. It's it's real. It's difficult out there. There's a lot. I would encourage you to look on YouTube. A lot of churches in general have moved services to online. So that's something to go look at. Google to see if your church has a website. Uh, and if they are doing offering services online, um, there's a lot of different church type service or just spiritual services in general on YouTube that can be reassuring or comforting to listen to. And Bella was saying also because my narcissistic ex contacted me again. Yeah, I would imagine that this is probably prime time for a lot of hearing from people that you never want to hear from again, coming up out of the blue because they're bored, they need money, they need a place to stay, they need something, they need attention, or what have you. And that can be incredibly difficult. Susanna says my accounts, that her accounts were hacked. That's another thing I wanted to mention. People, I just heard about this. There's scammers always adjust, and unfortunately, and there's quite a few different scams going around right now. One of them, the most recent one I heard of, was that they're calling people now and saying, "Okay, we have your kind of stimulus check for if you're an American, your $1,200 stimulus check, and we just need to know basically your bank account info. So don't fall for that. The IRS is not going to be doing that. They don't call you like that. So don't give your bank account info out. Another really common scam is people are messaging people on Facebook, especially, and saying, oh, hey, I used to know you from high school, or um, I just came across your profile. I think we would really click. Like, I hate to be so forward, but I just think, you're really attractive, blah, blah, blah. Or I always had a crush on you or something. And then they kind of, it doesn't matter if you're married or single, but they'll, if they can get you to either start, if they can get you to engage with them, then it's all blackmail. So like if you are married, it would be, okay, this person's, flirting back or sending nudes or being unfaithful. And so then they use that as blackmail. Or if you are single and they send you, some sexual picture and then you send one back, then they threaten to share that on the internet and to blackmail you with that. So just be very mindful about what kind of stuff you're sharing on the internet. I would strongly encourage you to never share um, information that you wouldn't want out there with another person. So Hmm, let's see here. Let's scroll up. Oh, I can imagine. I didn't even think about that, Jennifer. She says, my sister's trying to find a job right now since she can no longer Uber drive in San Francisco. And she says that there are lots of employer looking for worker type scams out there. Oh, I bet. I bet. So thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, you guys be careful. Yikes. Darlene says, my church had a video chat service on Messenger this Sunday and it worked really well, although we are a small church. I think that's wonderful. Listening, making a point to not only reduce the amount of news that you're watching, but also to increase the amount of kind of nourishing or relaxing information that's out there. There's lots and lots of guided meditations on YouTube that are several hours long. That can be a really wonderful way to fall asleep at night. There's guided meditations for anxiety, for relaxation, for just all kinds of things. Taking time to watch comedies, uh, just things that are completely unrelated. I don't know if you guys are into Key and Peele or not Key and Peele. Those two guys are hilarious. Hilarious. I don't think I've ever seen a skit by them that I haven't laughed at. So, if you're into kind of sketch comedy, they're hilarious. Highly recommend them. Another channel, it's completely unrelated. Craftsman. I was talking about him the other day. Crafsman. He's like this puppet guy, but I don't know who this. It's just some guy like who lives down south who has the most relaxing voice ever, and he does all of these craft projects, and it's just very wholesome, and he's just very mellow, and it's great. So things like that are completely unrelated are this is a good time for that kind of stuff. Let's see here. Scrolling. Jennifer says, I've seen a fair amount of people mention that they were diagnosed with pneumonia or a weird flu way back in November, even. They all think it seemed like COVID-19 because of the symptoms they had, because of the symptoms they had, and were almost going to the ER for it. Yeah, that's what's so, oh gosh, unnerving about this whole thing is the symptoms can vary so much from person to person. And especially now with allergy season starting here in the US, it just makes you so hyper vigilant. Like uh, any little symptoms, stuffy nose, a runny nose, a cough, a sneeze, everybody's on high alert. And that's a difficult way to live, to always be afraid of, well, what could this mean? And I think even after they get this virus under control, we're going to see a lot of that hypervigilance remain, understandably so, for probably years. So it's, um, yeah, learning how to kind of get back or how to maybe not get back to normal, but cultivate a new level of normal in all of this is going to be a challenge. That's a good saying, Crystal. She says, "I used to work in IT, and we had a saying that you don't share any info that you don't want at least 14 other people to know." I think that's a good rule of thumb. And oh, okay, the survivalist mentioned about the UV lights. He said you can get a 3-pack for $25. Okay. And then just kind of MacGyver it somehow. I think I will. I think I will, because that would give me a lot of peace of mind. It would also, if somebody's really handy out there, here's another idea. And maybe this is a thing, but I feel like it really should be a thing to have a UV light for your toothbrush. Like, I'd like to have a toothbrush holder with a cap on it because it completely skeeves me out to just have toothbrushes sitting on the counter because the bathroom is full of germs. Like a cap on it, but then like you could twist it like an egg timer and it would just have a UV light go and sanitize the toothbrushes for a minute or whatever. I don't know. And have some sort of, I don't, maybe like a little bit of airflow in there while the UV light's going. If anybody's really bored and you're looking for a project, that's a challenge. Camilla says, "Yes, I have my toothbrush in my hygiene bag." And I like your idea, Dana. Yes, I have mine in like a toothbrush holder that I keep in a drawer, but then it also kind of skews me out because it's wet going into this, holder. It just, we live in the year 2020. Like, I just feel like there needs to be, I know this is such a first world problem, right? But I just feel like there's got to be a better way. I don't know. Maybe I just have too much time on my hands. Oh, yeah, totally. Bonnie's saying, yeah, if you cough or sneeze, people startle and move away fast. Yes. It's so interesting too, because, before all of this, there was a lot of this pressure to not call in sick to work, where people are so funny, everybody would complain. I'm one of them too. When you have got a coworker that would call out for a few days, and it was sort of this mentality like, oh, come on, you just got to push through. And then other people would get sick, and then you get frustrated. It's ridiculous. And hopefully, especially here in the US, we've broken that mentality and realized the importance of a person's not feeling well, like they just need to stay home. Yes, it's inconvenient. Yes, it's extra work for everybody else, but it's better than getting sick, and just really driving home that point. So it's just it can be a very different world when all this is under control. And Bonnie says, I already have PTSD from the narcissistic abuse, and now the whole world has gone crazy. Yes, this is my main concern right now with people in our community is you've got a bunch of people who are already really struggling with trauma, and then something like this happens on top of it. And it's hard enough, this event on its own, let alone if a person's already struggling with processing trauma they've been through. It's significant. Uh, I came up, I don't think this is a term. I just came up with this term the other day. Um, well, a while back, actually. I used to call it grief stacking, but it's really more trauma stacking. And it's when kind of one thing happens after another. And when you just don't have time to process things. And yeah, like I feel like I can relate to that. I struggle. It's hard when things just kind of keep coming like that. Um, I don't know. I really, wish that there was some sort of mm, like helpline, like a free helpline that was like a suicide line, but for just people to talk about this. And I think that would be something wonderful that that could be funded. That it's needed instead of waiting for the virus to settle down or waiting for people to go into therapy. A lot of people, they can't afford it or they don't have insurance, or even if they have insurance, they still can't afford it. And um, to just give some sort of free community resources. Crystal says, quick, Dana, put a patent on that idea. One, my toothbrush egg timer UV light thing. Oh, I'm so full of all kinds of ideas. It's like 3 a.m. like 3 a.m. thoughts kind of a thing. Oh gosh. I would just be thrilled if somebody would actually make it. Yeah, that's frustrating. Jennifer was saying, but they're denying people tests. So how would one even be able to get 2 weeks off? Yeah. And that's frustrating. That's frustrating too. Even if a person does have symptoms, depending on where you're located, they require quite a few symptoms in order to even get tested. Hopefully that won't be an issue that much longer. It sounds like they're really working around the clock to get more tests out, to get faster tests out. So we'll see. Jack. Oh, I'm sorry, Jack. I didn't see your message. He was saying, Dana, my dad is struggling at every opportunity to change my mind about my mom's concerned trolling of him. Then, Jack, I would just encourage you to, if you don't want to have that conversation with your dad, I would just shut it down and just say, Dad, I appreciate your concern, but I just don't want to have this conversation anymore. We need to talk about something else. Susanna says, tell me again, what is this invention? This was a 3 a.m. conversation or 3 a.m. thought about, boy, wouldn't it be great if I could have a toothbrush sanitizer thing that had a cover and a UV light with a timer, and it could dry my toothbrush and it be covered and there was a UV light. Let's see here. Wait, can you repeat that, Angela? I only caught part of that. Okay, Susanna says, I am an engineer, a QA manager. Sounds great. Susanna, let's get on that. we gotta make this invention happen. Run with it, Susanna. You've got the skills. I don't. You're an engineer. I do not have that is not how my brain works. I am not detail oriented enough or patient enough to try to come up with something like that. But patent it and I'll be your first customer. Let's see. Let me. She says, you bet. I think people would buy it. But then again, I have to say, whenever I watch the show, what is it, Shark Tank or Dragon's Den? I feel like half the time the ideas that I think, I'm like, oh, that's who would buy that? Or that's ridiculous. That those are the ideas that end up making $1 million or whatever, millions of dollars. So I might not be the best judge of what makes for a good idea. But let's see. Jack says, with regards to his dad, he says, I've already gray rocked him twice and hung up the phone. Yeah. Well, I would just reassert that boundary with him and be very clear. Dad, I appreciate your concern, but mom's uh, concern or unwanted advice, it's unwanted and it's not okay with me. And I don't want to have this conversation again with you. We need to talk about something different. Just hold the line and then keep doing what you're doing. If he keeps bringing it up, you just say, okay, Dad, I gotta go. Okay, Dad, I gotta go. We're done here. And Jack says, I basically did as you said. That's 2 or 3 times. Nope. He keeps trying. Is this no contact time? That is going to be up to you, but you could let him know, Dad, if you bring this up again, I'm going to have to do X, Y, and Z. This is getting exhausting, whatever X, Y, and Z might mean for you. But I would just say, I need you to respect my boundary on this. This is not wanted. This is not okay with me. It just needs to stop. Montana says, oh my goodness, I'm totally I'm totally lost trying to catch up on here. And the page keeps refreshing and I lose where I was reading. Is this chat available after the live stream over by chance? I believe that it is. I believe. Do you guys know if the chat is available? I mean, it used to be. How scary, Bonnie. She says, my daughter works in the NYPD. Half the force is out sick with COVID-19. Some have died. The pressure is enormous. That's just got to be. What are they offering as far as like emotional health support during all of this? Do you know? I mean, are they even offering services? I know that New York is absolutely just in a scramble trying to keep up with everything, but do you know if they're offering um, anything like that? Okay. Show you. Welcome back. He says, I had to go eat dinner. How are you doing? How are things in your world? Let's see here. Let me scroll up. People are talking about my toothbrush sanitizer. Tooth Sticker says we could call it the tooth tanner, but that would be a bad name for it. It's funny. Yeah. And Bonnie says, oh my gosh, my daughter-in-law is a germaphobe with a 4-month-old baby. It's a nightmare. I can only imagine. I really feel for the people that struggle with OCD and are more on like that germaphobe side of the spectrum. I cannot even imagine how difficult this must be for them. Yikes. Yikes. And I wonder what they're doing to kind of um, stay sane and in this, because it really can consume you with all of the what ifs. Xiao Yu says, yes, Dana, OCD is a living hell. Mm, yeah, I can imagine. The brain is so interesting, the different ways that it uh, goes about trying to keep us safe, you know, and and how things can get taken to such an extreme. Oh, well, you're welcome, Camilla. She says, Dana, you create such a beautiful place for people here. Thank you for always doing these live streams and being here for us. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad. I'm glad I can do this. Xiao Yu says, I'm good, Dana. How are you? You know, uh I'm pretty good. I've had some moments of anxiety, I think like everybody else has, with all of this, the world going the way it's going. But um, overall, I'm trying to make the best use of this time. There's uh, lots of projects around here. I love to write. So, excuse me. And I always have at least a dozen different book ideas at a time. So, um, working on all these ideas and getting organized and doing this kind of stuff. So, not letting any grass grow under my feet. Watching Breaking Bad. uh, I hadn't seen that series before, and I think I'm almost done with it. It's really well written show. I could do without all the violence, but it's just a good show. Okay, let's see here. Oh, Jennifer says, Dana, last week I think you mentioned a journal that has its own questions in it. Was that the one that you produced? If so, what was it called again? There's, I have 3 different ones. Well, one of them isn't a journal. One of them is um, self-awareness questions. And then one is like a true gratitude journal. It's called the Gratitude Journal. Real creative title there, I know. And then the other one is called the Insight Journal. And that one is either a 1-year journal or a 3-year journal. That I vote for the 3-year journal because you just go through it for 3 years, and then you can see just how your thought process has changed over time, which is cool. You can find all that if you go to Amazon and just look up Dana Morningstar if you're interested. So Jennifer, since you are on the front lines as working in a grocery store, if you email me your address, I'll mail you a copy of the book. Okay. So you can email me, dana@thriveafterabuse.com. If you're comfortable with emailing me your address, be more than happy to send you those journals. Okay. Yeah. She says, yeah, it sounds like so much more appealing than a blank journal. Yeah, they're fun. They're interesting. She says, oh, no, it's okay. I can pay for it. No problem. Girl, seriously, I insist. I'd be more than happy to send them to you. I just can't, the world thanks you guys so much. Everybody that's working at a grocery store, that's dealing with us, the general public during this time, that's in the healthcare field, all of that. Seriously. Yeah. Just email me your address. I'll be more than happy to send that out to you. Okay, let's see here. Montana saying she lives alone. My 4 kids are being kept from me by abusers for over 3 years now, so there's no one with me either. It's good to come here to socialize. I don't even have a TV yet. So yeah. Well, yeah, this is quite the time to be starting over. My goodness, if you can get through this time, then I don't know what, I mean, you could do anything. Really. I mean, this is, yeah. Trial by fire, intense times. Let's see, let's scroll up here. Oh, Bonnie was saying her daughter-in-law did a funny picture of the baby on Facebook wearing a COVID mask and a cowboy hat and dark glasses. He looked like a cool COVID-19 new age baby. That's hilarious. Yeah, there's been talk going around on the internet with calling these babies that are being born around this time coronials. That should be their name. The babies that are going to come from all this. See, Huffle Mom says, I told my EFIL. Is that, I'm not sure what the E stands for, father-in-law, that I wanted him to bring his concerns about me to me. He thinks I'm mad at him because Jack twisted what he and the narcissistic mother-in-law said to me. I guess I'm brainless. Yeah, and that's the thing. When somebody's got trouble with boundaries in one area, they're going to have them in multiple areas, and you're just speaking 2 different languages. They just don't get it. Like, how is this a violation of your boundaries? Because they want what they want, and they just don't understand why anybody else has a problem with that. So yeah, that's frustrating. Montana asked, does anyone happen to know where we can get free audiobooks online? I did try my local library, but the abuser owes them in my name. Any free sites anyone knows of by chance? I don't know of any other free sites that are like legit other than libraries. You might be able to call the library and come up with, to pay them a very small amount for them to open up the library card, especially during this time. I'm trying to think of other. You could open up a library card in another town since you moved. So that's a thought too. But I would call the library and say that your ex owes, this was part of it and ran up a bunch of late fees and all kinds of stuff. And, um, this is the situation, and see what they can do. Jennifer says, I feel so bad for shelters right now. What do they do when somebody gets the virus? Yeah, I know. I am going to guess that shelters are not going to be open for that much longer because of that, which is scary because for all the reasons. I was really hoping, or I had this other idea. I should say 3 a.m. 3 a.m. thoughts, where, and I forget, I think it was Bon Jovi, maybe. I want to say maybe that was a weird dream, but I'm pretty sure it was Bon Jovi that has a restaurant where people, um, everything is kind of, um, there's no charge. It's not free. It's just you pay what you can, or you pay what you think it's worth. And I really love this concept. So if a person's struggling and they can't afford a meal, they can go in there and they can have a meal, and there's no expectation. Um, because other people that have money tend to go in there, and then they might pay 2 or 3 times as much for their meal, knowing that it's going to be paid forward to somebody else. I really, really, really like that idea. And I know that there's so many restaurants right now that are probably throwing away a lot of food due to spoilage. And I think, boy, um, it would be really great if during this time that they could switch things up to offering, you know, basically pay what you can kind of meals. Okay, Darlene says yes, it is Bon Jovi. Okay, I thought it was, but then I started saying it out loud. I'm like, that seems like a weird dream. So glad to know that that's really a thing. I think that's so cool. Because that's the whole food is going to be, it's a very real concern for a lot of people. Gamer Christina asks, Dana, do you think it is selfish of me to start an argument with my 11-year-old because she does not text me back when she is at her dad's, but when she is with me, I can see her texting her dad? A couple of things here. Do I think it's selfish? I think the better question would be, do I think it would help? And the answer is no. I don't think it would help to get into an argument with your 11-year-old about something like that. I think perhaps a better approach would be, um, to talk to her about why that is. So, and I would also say it would probably be worth investing, um, the time to do some things with her to kind of, um, have more of a connection when she is with you. So I don't know the dynamic. I don't know if she's texting her dad more. I don't know what her relationship is with her father, or her relationship with you. If she feels more comfortable with you, maybe that's why she's not texting you back. Whereas maybe her dad jumps down her throat if she doesn't get back to him. I don't know. Or maybe she's kind of harboring some resentment, or, um, something, your relationship with her relationship with you, she's feeling it's more, um, fragmented than you realize. But I would talk to her about it. She's 11. That's she's able to be to have that conversation. She says it's because her dad is annoyed when she talks about her life over here. Can she go in the other room? Yes, I second that suggestion. Uh, Rand Lyon says, Gamer Christina, I would strongly recommend the book called Divorce Poison. That is a fantastic book. And I highly recommend anybody that is going through a divorce, or that has been through a divorce, not even a divorce, who is trying to co-parent or parallel parent with um, another person in general, to just read that book. It's really great. And because it's not just kind of high conflict or difficult people, it can be this kind of um, poison can come from anywhere, and it can be intentional or it can be unintentional. And the more aware of it you are, the better off, uh, the more you can kind of head it off at the pass, kind of a thing. Can your daughter, if she can't go in the other room and talk to you privately, that's a whole other issue, and I would be concerned about that. Um, that's just concerning. It's manipulative on his behalf. Like, he can be annoyed all he wants, but he needs to not show that around her. She shouldn't feel that she's having to protect his feelings um, in this situation. She's the child, he's the adult. And that there's some role reversal stuff going on there if she's trying to protect him or avoid uh you know um him being pouty and immature about it. So if she can't leave the room, if she could um text with you, and maybe you guys can uh, I would ask her. It sounds like she's stuck between a rock and a hard place. So I for sure wouldn't argue with her about it. And I wouldn't put her I wouldn't make an already uncomfortable position worse. I would ask her, what do you think? What is she comfortable with in this type of situation as far as communication with you goes? How can you best support her in this? And what does she think would work? You know, um, if her dad's uncomfortable, if she's calling on you guys could go with emojis or something, and kind of come up with some emojis and give them different meanings. So instead of giving each other saying I love you, if that's upsetting him or causing your daughter unnecessary stress in her life, instead of sending like a heart emoji or telling her that you love her, you could send her the 4-leaf clover or something else. Do you see what I'm saying? But then your daughter knows that that's your own little secret code between the two of you. I would really put her mental and emotional health first in all of this. Okay, that's concerning. Gamer Christina. Uh, gosh, she says she broke her leg on a scooter at her dad's and didn't cry until I picked her up the next morning because her dad is annoyed when she cries. Hmm. Does she see a therapist at all? And have you had any? Okay. The hospital called the Child Protective Services. Yeah, I would agree. This is that's concerning and worthy of a CPS call. Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of factors at play in that. Um, I would encourage you to document. I would encourage you to see if you can get your daughter into a lot of times domestic violence shelters will have a child therapist, and if they do, it's free. So you might want to call, and now even with the virus, depending on the age of the child, of course, they're either doing Zoom or Skype type sessions or over the phone type sessions. So that might be something that you could still potentially get started with. I don't know what the parenting agreement is or what your divorce decree is as far as, services for your daughter, but uh, that kind of stuff is concerning. If she can stuff her physical feelings of pain after breaking a bone in order to not upset her dad, then yes, that's concerning. And that's a sign that there's some emotional abuse going on, whether or not he's aware of it or not, whether or not it's intentional or not. But when you've got a kids shouldn't have to walk on eggshells. Nobody should have to walk on eggshells. Walking on eggshells is a problem. It's one person being manipulative. And the whole thing is either do what I want or there's going to be hell to pay. That's what eggshells are. And that's not okay. It's psychologically and emotionally abusive. And yeah, yes, I agree. Maura says they'll be aware that if he has joint legal custody, therapy has to be agreed to by him. Yes. And that's the thing. Gamer Christina is saying, yeah, CPS says there was no sign of abuse in the home, so they did nothing. That is what can be really difficult with psychological and emotional abuse like that. Is sometimes it's going to depend on the CPS worker and so many other things. Um, abuse and neglect isn't always so obvious. It's not that there's always just, no food in the cabinets or the houses, there's nails sticking up out of the floor or there's no electricity or it's not always it's rarely that extreme. So, especially with emotional and psychological abuse like that, that's a problem, but it's going to be hard, difficult to prove. But yes, with the counseling thing, this is something I definitely would talk to the child counselor about, as far as what kind of, if you share custody, then what are the rights of the other parent? How does the counselor go about their practice? Can where are the boundaries for confidentiality? Can he see the case notes? These kinds of things. Can you see case notes? I mean, where are the lines with that? Let's see here. Shall you? I was saying, I remember years ago, I told my friend I was being abused, so they called the cops. But when the cops arrived, my parents manipulated me into disagreeing that there was no abuse in the home. At the time, I didn't know what narcissistic abuse was. I was still in middle school. I told them that there was a misunderstanding, and so they left because I was so scared. Yeah, and that's the position, most kids are in. Most people in general are not aware of emotional or psychological or even verbal abuse. They tend to only understand abuse in terms of being something that's physical or sexual. And this is, and it's really frustrating because most kids are going to, no matter how horrible their home life is, they're afraid. They're afraid if they do speak out, then nothing's going to happen, or that the system is going to somehow fail them. And those are legitimate fears. So I'm really sorry that you went through that. Hmm. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just reading through the chat here. See, Daniel. Hi, Daniel. Saying, I've been dealing with depression, waking up to the reality of narcissistic abuse by my parents. I started to talk about things, ask questions. Yeah, waking up to abuse is can be profoundly difficult. Oh my goodness. He says, my narcissistic mother said if I was so depressed, she would save up her Xanax if I wanted to overdose. Just true evil. Oh my goodness. I'm glad that you can see that kind of behavior for what it is and a reflection of her behavior, not a reflection of your self-worth. So I'm glad that you have a lot of clarity now about um, kind of what's been going on, because when it is that psychological and emotional abuse, it's so uh, it can just be so confusing, and people oftentimes feel the blame. So I guess we welcome you on this journey to understanding as much as you can about your childhood, and hopefully piecing putting the pieces of the puzzle together in a new and empowering way to build or rebuild your life into something better than it was before. That's our goal here. That's a good question, Jack. I'll have to look. I don't know if they're still valid. He says, Dana, do you still have promo codes for your narcissist playbook? I might. I'll have to check with um, ACX or Audible tomorrow and see. Um, yeah, yeah. Let me think about how to do that. Montana, if you're going to be back next week, I will look. Let me make a note to myself because let's see. ECX. Okay, I will look and then let you know next week. Okay, so with that said, really, I did not know that. That's wonderful, Kevin. Thank you for letting us know that. He says Audible has free children's books at the moment. That is so cool. And sometimes you can find audiobooks. Libraries are a big one. Um, trying to give you guys like legitimate, like non-pirated stuff. Um, Gosh, where else? There's more affordable sites out there. I want to say Google Play, Scribd. And Montana saying, oh, sorry, trying to listen and then trying to read. I don't know how you guys stay up with the chat. LOL. Oh, yeah, it's chaos, and it's actually not moving that fast tonight. There have been times where it just goes so, so fast. It's wild. But okay, so with that said, um, we normally do a guided meditation at the end of these live streams. So if you guys want to stay for that, now is a good time to get comfortable, whether you're sitting down or laying down, and allowing yourself to just breathe and relax and unwind. So allow yourself a few breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Allowing yourself to be fully present in this moment and allowing each breath to travel deeper into the bases of your lungs. Feeling your chest rise and fall easily and effortlessly as you get settled into this moment. And releasing all of the worry and anxiety from the past and all of the worry and anxiety about the future. And letting yourself be fully present here in this moment. Bringing your attention to the top of your head, relaxing your forehead, your eyebrows, your eyes, your cheeks, and your jaw, allowing your mouth to hang open and your tongue to fall from the roof of your mouth. And relaxing your neck, dropping your shoulders down and back. Relaxing your chest, relaxing your stomach, feeling all of that tightness just easily and effortlessly unwind as your chest rises and falls with each passing breath. Relaxing your arms, your forearms, your hands, and your fingers. Allowing your arms to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable. Relaxing your hips, and relaxing your thighs, your knees, and your calves. Allowing your legs to grow heavy with each passing breath. Relaxing your feet and your toes. And allowing your legs to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable for you. With each breath in, feeling your whole body rise and fall. Feeling that breath moves so easily and effortlessly down into your lungs, into your stomach, down your legs, into your toes. And turning your attention inward and noticing the feeling of your heart beating as you're here in this moment. Realizing that there are a lot of things that are good and right in your life at this moment and in general. And taking time to acknowledge all of the things, character traits that are good and right about you, that you are strong, that you are capable, that you are courageous, that you're creative with all of the ways that you've been working towards solving these problems in your life, that you're dedicated, that you're interested in personal growth and taking time for self-reflection. That's huge. Like there are so many things that are good and right about you. Acknowledging, taking time to just acknowledge these things and to tell yourself, just thank you. Like you've come a long way. You've come a long way. And there are so many things that are good and right about you. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes and come on back. So, yes, I'm so glad. Welcome to all of the new people that are here tonight. And again, of course, welcome to all of the returning people here tonight. It's so glad to have you guys. And um, I know there's a lot going on in the world, but we're just going to take it a step at a time. That's all any of us can do. So let's just do that. Focus on what we have control over, work on letting go what we don't have control over, and we'll just keep moving forward. So you guys take care, and I will see you next week, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Wednesday night. We normally go for 3 hours. So we'll see you then. So as always, just lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care, and just lots of light and love to you guys. Okay, good night.